The wolves were 3 seconds from tearing them apart when Evelyn Mercer made the choice that would destroy everything she'd built to protect herself. She could have locked the door, should have locked it. For 5 years, she'd survived these mountains alone by trusting absolutely no one. But when that little girl's scream cut through the blizzard, something in Evelyn's frozen heart cracked open, and she fired into the darkness instead of hiding. What she didn't know was that the strangers she'd just saved were running from something far more dangerous than wolves. Stay with me until the end of this story, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this journey travels. The rifle kick nearly knocked Evelyn backward into the cabin doorway, but she steadied herself against the frame and fired again. The muzzle flash lit up the storm for half a second, just long enough to see yellow eyes scattering into the tree line. Snow was coming down so thick she could barely see 10 feet, but she heard the snarling fade into the wind. "Get inside, now!" The man didn't argue. He stumbled through the doorway with the child clutched against his chest, both of them crusted in ice. Evelyn slammed the door shut and dropped the wooden bar across it, her hands shaking, not from cold, but from what she'd just done. She'd opened the door. After 5 years of keeping it locked against everything and everyone, she'd actually opened it. The stranger collapsed against her table, still gripping the little girl like wolves might burst through the walls any second. He was gasping, his breath coming in ragged clouds in the freezing cabin. The child wasn't making a sound anymore, just staring at Evelyn with these huge dark eyes that seemed too old for her face. Evelyn kept the rifle pointed at them. "You've got 30 seconds to tell me who you are and why I shouldn't throw you back out there." The man lifted his head. Even half frozen and covered in snow, he had the look of someone who was used to being in control. Expensive coat, good boots, though both were torn to hell now. His face was hard, weathered, the kind of face that had seen plenty of trouble and caused some of it too. "Caleb Hart." His voice was rough, scraping. "This is my daughter Lily. Our horses spooked in the storm, threw us, ran off." "Hart!" Evelyn didn't lower the rifle. "That's supposed to mean something to me?" "No." He coughed, wincing. "It's just my name." The little girl shifted in his arms, and Evelyn saw blood on the man's sleeve. Not much, but enough. "You're hurt." "It's nothing." "It's something if you bleed out on my floor." Evelyn finally lowered the rifle, but she didn't set it down. "Put her in that chair by the fire, carefully." Caleb moved slowly, like he wasn't sure his legs would hold. He set the girl down and she immediately curled into herself, shivering so hard her teeth rattled. She looked maybe 6 years old. Dark hair plastered to her head, skin too pale, lips starting to go blue. Evelyn cursed under her breath. She'd seen frostbite before. The girl had maybe an hour before it got serious. "There's blankets in the chest." She jerked her chin toward the corner. "Get her out of those wet clothes. I'll build up the fire." She expected him to argue, to make demands, to act like the kind of man who wore a coat that expensive usually acted. Instead, he just nodded and moved to the chest, his movements careful and deliberate. Like he was trying very hard not to collapse. Evelyn fed the fire, her mind racing. This was a mistake. A massive, stupid mistake. She had enough food for herself, barely. The storm had already been going for 2 days and showed no sign of stopping. And now she had 2 extra mouths to feed and, "Thank you." She turned. Caleb had wrapped the girl in 2 of Evelyn's only 3 blankets and was rubbing her arms, trying to get her circulation going. He was looking at Evelyn with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Don't thank me yet." She stood up, brushing soot off her hands. "You're here for tonight, 1 night. Storm breaks, you leave." "Understood." "I mean it. I don't care who you are or where you're from. I don't do charity and I don't do company." "I said I understood." His jaw was tight. "We'll be gone as soon as the weather allows." The little girl, Lily, made a small sound. Not quite a whimper, but close. Caleb's whole body tensed, and he pulled her closer, murmuring something Evelyn couldn't hear. She turned away and started pulling out what food she had. Dried meat, some potatoes she'd been saving, half a loaf of bread that was already going stale. She'd planned to make it last another week. Now she'd be lucky if it lasted 3 days. The wind screamed against the cabin walls. Somewhere out in that darkness, the wolves were still circling, waiting for any living thing stupid enough to leave shelter. Evelyn had lost count of how many winters she'd spent listening to that sound, knowing that the wolves weren't really the dangerous part. The dangerous part was the cold, the isolation, the slow erosion of everything that made a person want to keep living. Papa. The girl's voice was so quiet Evelyn almost didn't hear it. I'm here, sweetheart. I'm right here. I'm cold. I know, but you're going to be okay. I promise. Promises. Evelyn sliced the bread harder than necessary. Promises didn't mean anything up here. She'd learned that the hard way. She brought them food and watched as Caleb tried to get Lily to eat. The girl took tiny bites, like swallowing hurt. Probably did. Her throat was likely raw from screaming. Caleb ate mechanically, not tasting anything, his eyes never leaving his daughter. How long have you been out there? Evelyn asked. Since yesterday morning, Caleb rubbed his face. We were heading to Fort Collins, had a guide, but he turned back when the storm hit. Said we should too. I thought we could make it. That was stupid. Yes. No defensiveness, just flat agreement. It was. Evelyn studied him. Most men would have bristled at being called stupid by a woman living alone in a mountain shack. But Caleb just sat there looking like he'd already beaten himself up more than anyone else could. Why Fort Collins? He hesitated. Business. What kind of business takes a man and his little girl into the mountains in winter? The kind that couldn't wait. His tone made it clear the conversation was over. Fine. Evelyn didn't actually want to know anyway. The less she knew about them, the easier it would be when they left. She busied herself checking her traps near the door, 3 rabbit snares she could reach without going outside. All empty. The wolves had probably scared off anything with sense. She'd have to make the food stretch further than she'd planned. Behind her, she heard Caleb humming something soft. A lullaby, maybe. Lily's breathing was evening out, getting deeper, falling asleep. Evelyn closed her eyes. She hadn't heard a lullaby in 5 years. Not since… No, she wasn't going there. She's asleep, Caleb said quietly. Evelyn turned. He was still holding Lily, even though she'd gone limp against him. His arm had to be killing him, but he didn't move. You can lay her down, Evelyn said. There's a cot against the far wall. She'll wake up if I move her. Then you'll be holding her all night. I've done it before. They sat in silence for a while. The fire crackled, the wind howled. Snow kept piling up outside, burying the world deeper and deeper. You live here alone? Caleb asked finally. That a problem? No, just unusual. Lots of things are unusual. Doesn't make them wrong. I didn't say it was wrong. He shifted slightly, trying to get comfortable without waking Lily. How long? 5 years? That's a long time. Evelyn didn't answer. 5 years wasn't long enough. Not nearly long enough to forget the faces she'd buried before coming up here. Not long enough to stop hearing their voices when the wind blew a certain way. What about you? She asked, more to change the subject than because she cared. Where's her mother? Caleb's expression went carefully blank. Dead. Oh. Evelyn looked away. Sorry. 2 years ago, fever. The same thing that had taken Evelyn's family. She felt something twist in her chest, something that felt dangerously close to sympathy. That's rough, she said quietly. Yes. Caleb's arms tightened around Lily. It was. More silence. Evelyn found herself watching the way he held his daughter, protective but gentle, like she was the most precious thing in the world and also the most fragile. It reminded her of how Thomas used to hold their son before the fever came, before everything ended. She stood up abruptly. I need to check the chimney. It didn't need checking, but she needed to move, needed to do something other than sit there drowning in memories. She climbed the ladder to the loft where she slept, pretending to examine the stones around the chimney pipe. Really, she was just trying to breathe. When she came back down, Caleb had finally laid Lily on the cot. He'd covered her with both blankets and was now standing by the fire, holding his injured arm carefully. Let me see that, Evelyn said. It's fine, and I'm the Queen of England. Sit down. He hesitated, then sat. Evelyn pulled over her medical supplies, such as they were. Mostly just clean cloth, some whiskey for disinfecting, and a needle and thread she'd used to stitch up worse injuries on herself. She cut away his sleeve. The wound was a long gash on his forearm, probably from a broken branch. Not deep enough to be life-threatening, but deep enough to need stitching. This is going to hurt, she said. I figured. She poured whiskey over the wound. Caleb sucked in a breath through his teeth, but didn't make a sound. Evelyn threaded her needle and started stitching. Her hands were steady. She'd done this enough times that it was almost automatic. "You're good at this," Caleb said. "Practice." "On yourself?" "Mostly." He was quiet while she worked. She could feel him watching her, but she kept her eyes on the stitches. Neat and tight, the way her mother had taught her before the world fell apart. "You married?" he asked suddenly. "Was. What happened?" Evelyn pulled the thread tight, maybe harder than necessary. "Same thing that happened to you. Fever took them all. Husband, son, daughter. 3 weeks from first cough to last breath." "I'm sorry." "Everyone's sorry. Doesn't bring them back." She tied off the last stitch and wrapped his arm in clean cloth. When she looked up, Caleb was staring at her with an expression that made her uncomfortable. Not pity. She would have kicked him out if it was pity. Something else. Understanding, maybe. Or recognition. "That's why you're up here," he said. "Alone." "That's none of your business." "You're right. It's not." He flexed his arm carefully, testing the stitches. "But I understand it. After Margaret died, I wanted to run too. Find some place where nothing could touch me again. So why didn't you?" He glanced at Lily, sleeping peacefully by the fire. "Her. I couldn't run because she needed me to stay." Evelyn looked away. She'd had the same thought once, right after the funerals, that she should stay, should rebuild, should find a way to keep living in the town where her family was buried. But every street corner had a memory, every face a reminder. In the end, running had been the only thing that kept her from putting a bullet in her own head. "Well," she said, standing up, "you should rest. Long as the storm lasts, you're stuck here." "What about you?" "What about me? You need rest, too." "I'll sleep when I'm dead." She started cleaning up the medical supplies. "One of us needs to keep the fire going." "I can do that." "No, you can't. You're barely standing." She met his eyes. "Sleep, Mr. Hart. I'll wake you if anything happens." For a moment she thought he'd argue, but then he nodded and moved to the floor near Lily's cot, positioning himself between her and the door. Even injured and exhausted, he was still protecting his daughter. Evelyn settled into her chair by the fire, the rifle across her lap. Outside, the storm raged on. Inside, the cabin was warm and quiet, except for the breathing of 2 people she'd probably never see again after tomorrow. She should have felt angry about sharing her space, her food, her safety. Instead, she felt something she hadn't experienced in 5 years. She felt less alone, and that terrified her more than any pack of wolves ever could. Oh, hours passed. Maybe 3, maybe 5. Evelyn had lost track. The storm wasn't letting up. If anything, it was getting worse. She could hear the wind screaming like something alive and furious, throwing snow against the cabin walls hard enough to make the whole structure shudder. She fed the fire and watched it burn, trying not to think about how her woodpile was getting low. Trying not to think about how she'd have to make it last for 3 people now, instead of 1. Trying not to think about the man sleeping on her floor and the little girl curled up under her blankets. "You don't have to do that, you know." She jumped. Caleb was awake, propped up on one elbow, watching her. "Do what?" "Watch over us all night. I can take a shift." "I said I'd handle it." "And I said I can help." He sat up slowly, wincing. "You've already done more than most people would. Let me do something to earn our keep." "You don't need to earn anything. You're leaving tomorrow." "Maybe." He looked toward the door. "Or maybe not. Listen to that wind." Evelyn listened. He was right. The storm sounded worse than before, if that was even possible. "It'll pass," she said. "Will it?" She didn't answer because they both knew it might not. Winter storms in these mountains could last a week, sometimes longer. Caleb stood up, moving carefully to avoid waking Lily. He came to sit near the fire, keeping a respectful distance from Evelyn. "Tell me about this place," he said. "How'd you end up here?" "Does it matter?" "Probably not. But we're awake, and talking passes the time." Evelyn considered telling him to shut up and go back to sleep. Instead, she heard herself saying, "Found it by accident. Was heading higher into the mountains. Didn't care where, just wanted to disappear. Came across this cabin. Previous owner had died the winter before, according to some trappers I ran into. Place was empty. I claimed it." "Just like that?" "Just like that." Fixed the roof, reinforced the walls, learned to hunt, figured out how to survive. Why here specifically? Why not just move to a different town? Evelyn stared into the fire. Because towns have people. People ask questions. People look at you with those eyes that say they know what you lost, and they feel sorry for you. People try to help you move on. She said the last words like they tasted bitter. I didn't want to move on. I wanted to disappear. And did you? Disappear? For a while, she paused. Then winter came and I realized disappearing isn't the same as dying, and I was too stubborn to die. So I learned to survive instead. Caleb nodded slowly. I know that feeling, the stubbornness. After Margaret died, I threw myself into the ranch, worked 18-hour days, drove myself and everyone around me half crazy. Thought if I just stayed busy enough, I wouldn't have to feel anything. Did it work? No. He smiled, but it was sad. Lily made sure of that. She'd come find me in the middle of the day, crying because she missed her mother, and I'd have to stop and hold her and feel everything I was trying to avoid. Sounds hard. It was. It is. He glanced at his sleeping daughter. But at least I'm feeling something, even if it hurts. Evelyn didn't know what to say to that. She'd spent 5 years trying not to feel anything, and she'd gotten pretty good at it. The thought of opening herself back up to that kind of pain made her want to run even further into the mountains. They sat in silence for a while. It wasn't uncomfortable exactly, just two people who understood loss sitting in the dark, listening to the storm try to kill them. Can I ask you something? Caleb said eventually. You can ask. Doesn't mean I'll answer. Fair enough. He paused. Why'd you open the door? When you heard us out there, why'd you let us in? Evelyn had been asking herself the same question for hours. I don't know. You could have left us out there, wouldn't have blamed you. Woman alone, two strangers in a storm. That's dangerous. Yeah, well, she adjusted the rifle on her lap. Maybe I'm dangerous too. He smiled at that. A real smile this time, not sad. I believe it. Besides, Evelyn continued, I heard your daughter screaming. What was I supposed to do? Most people would have stayed inside, kept themselves safe. I'm not most people. No, Caleb said quietly. You're not. Something in his tone made Evelyn look at him. He was watching her with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. Not threatening, just seeing her, really seeing her, like he was looking past the walls she'd built and recognizing something underneath. She stood up abruptly. I'm going to check the back wall. Snow's piling up against it. Evelyn? She stopped. It was the first time he'd used her name. Thank you, he said, for opening the door. She didn't trust herself to respond, so she just nodded and went to check the wall, which didn't need checking, but she needed distance from whatever had just passed between them. The next morning came gray and cold. Evelyn woke with a start, realizing she'd actually fallen asleep in her chair. The fire had burned down to embers. Caleb was asleep on the floor again, and Lily was awake. The little girl was sitting up on the cot, staring at Evelyn with those huge dark eyes. She didn't say anything, just watched. Evelyn cleared her throat. Morning. Lily kept staring. You feeling better? A tiny nod. Good. Evelyn stood up, her back protesting. She was too old to be sleeping in chairs. I'm going to build up the fire. You hungry? Another nod. Evelyn fed the fire and started preparing breakfast, what little there was of it. Some oatmeal, a bit of honey to make it palatable. She was intensely aware of Lily watching her every move. You can talk, you know, Evelyn said without turning around. I don't bite. Papa says I shouldn't bother you. Her voice was small and careful, like she was used to making herself as unobtrusive as possible. Your papa's asleep, and making breakfast isn't bothering me. It's just what people do in the morning. Lily thought about this. Are you angry we're here? Evelyn paused in her stirring. That was a hell of a question for a 6-year-old to ask. No, she said finally. I'm not angry. Papa said some people don't like visitors. Your papa's right. I'm one of those people. Evelyn glanced over her shoulder. But that doesn't mean I'm angry you're here. Oh. Lily pulled the blankets tighter around herself. Miss Evelyn? Just Evelyn. Evelyn, Why do you live here by yourself? Because I want to. Don't you get lonely? Evelyn felt something clench in her chest. Sometimes. I get lonely too, Lily said quietly. Even though Papa's always there, I still miss Mama. I know, sweetheart, that's normal. Does it get better? The missing? Evelyn looked at this little girl who'd already lost her mother, who'd almost died in a storm last night, who was sitting there asking if pain ever stopped hurting. I don't know, Evelyn said honestly. I haven't figured that out yet. Lily nodded, like that made perfect sense. Okay. Caleb woke up a few minutes later and the three of them ate breakfast in relative silence. The storm was still going strong outside. When Evelyn checked the door, she couldn't even see past the porch, just a wall of white. We're snowed in, she announced. Caleb looked at the door, then at her. How long? Could be a day, could be a week. No way to know until it stops. She saw him processing this, saw the worry flash across his face before he hit it. He was thinking about food, about imposing, about being trapped with a stranger who'd made it very clear she didn't want company. I'll hunt, he said. Soon as there's a break in the weather. I know you don't have enough food for 3. You'll die if you go out in that. Then I'll find another way to help. Repairs, firewood, something. His jaw was set. I won't just sit here and take from you. Fine, Evelyn said. Woodshed's around back. Needs reorganizing. You can do that if the storm eases up enough. It was busy work and they both knew it, but Caleb nodded like she'd given him something important. The day passed slowly. Evelyn tried to go about her normal routine, checking her traps, inventorying supplies, maintaining her equipment, but everything felt off with 2 other people in her space. She kept bumping into Caleb, kept catching Lily watching her with those serious eyes. Around midday, Lily started coughing. It wasn't bad at first, just a little tickle that made her clear her throat. But within an hour, it had gotten worse. Deep, wet coughs that shook her small frame. Caleb's face went white. It's just from the cold, Evelyn said quickly, seeing his panic. From being out in the storm. Not fever. You don't know that. I've seen fever. This isn't it. She moved to check Lily's forehead. Warm, but not burning. She needs rest and warmth, maybe some tea if I can spare it. She made tea with the last of her dried herbs and made Lily drink it, even though the girl wrinkled her nose at the taste. Then she wrapped her in another blanket and made her lie back down. Caleb sat beside the cot, holding his daughter's hand, and Evelyn saw his whole world in his face. The terror, the helplessness, the memory of losing someone before, and the desperate fear of losing someone again. She'll be okay, Evelyn said. You can't promise that. No, but I can tell you she's not as sick as you think. The cough will pass. He looked at her, searching her face for certainty she couldn't give. How do you know? Because I've seen enough death to recognize it, and it's not here, not today. Some of the tension left his shoulders. Not all of it. That would take Lily actually getting better, but enough that he could breathe again. Thank you, he said. Evelyn just nodded and went back to her work, leaving him to his vigil. By evening, Lily's cough had already started to ease. Evelyn had been right. It was just from the cold and wet. The girl was young and resilient. She'd bounce back. But the storm wasn't bouncing back. If anything, it was getting more vicious. Evelyn had never seen snow come down this hard for this long. They were going to be trapped here for days at least, maybe longer. Maybe she did the math in her head. 3 people, limited food. If she stretched everything as far as it would go, they had maybe 4 days before they'd be in real trouble. I'm going out tomorrow, Caleb said that night, like he'd read her thoughts. Storm or no storm, we need food. You'll freeze to death. Better than starving to death. Neither of those options is acceptable. Then what do you suggest? He kept his voice low so Lily wouldn't hear, but there was an edge to it. We can't just sit here and hope for the best. We can if we're smart about it, ration what we have, wait for a break in the weather. And if there isn't a break? Evelyn didn't have an answer for that. They stared at each other across the fire, 2 stubborn people refusing to back down. Finally, Caleb looked away. I won't let my daughter starve, he said quietly. Neither will I, Evelyn replied. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, maybe. Like he hadn't expected her to claim any stake in Lily's survival. Why do you care? He asked. You don't know us. Doesn't matter. She's a child. That's enough. Caleb studied her for a long moment. You're not as hard as you pretend to be. Don't bet on it. But even as she said it, Evelyn knew he was right. She'd spent 5 years building walls, and these two strangers had walked through them in less than 2 days. That night, Lily had a nightmare. Evelyn woke to the sound of her crying, soft, muffled sobs like the girl was trying not to disturb anyone. Caleb was already awake, holding her, murmuring comfort. But Lily just kept crying. I want Mama, she whispered. I want Mama. I know, sweetheart, I know. Evelyn should have stayed in her loft, should have let Caleb handle it. Instead, she found herself climbing down and sitting beside them. Hey, she said softly. You're okay. You're safe. Lily looked at her with tear-stained cheeks. I dreamed we were still in the snow and the wolves came back. Well, you're not in the snow. You're right here where it's warm, and the wolves can't get in. Promise? Evelyn hesitated. She hated promises. They were just pretty lies that made disappointment hurt worse. But looking at this terrified little girl, she found herself saying, I promise. Nothing's getting in here. Not while I'm around. Lily reached out and grabbed Evelyn's hand. Her fingers were small and cold and trusting in a way that made Evelyn's chest hurt. Will you stay? Lily asked. Until I fall asleep? Evelyn looked at Caleb. He nodded slightly, giving permission or maybe just acknowledging that Lily had already decided. Yeah, Evelyn said. I'll stay. She sat there on the floor beside the cot, holding a little girl's hand while Caleb hummed another lullaby, and felt every wall she'd built starting to crack. This was dangerous. This feeling, this caring. She'd sworn she'd never let anyone close enough to hurt her again. But here she was, worrying about whether they'd have enough food, whether Lily's cough would come back, whether Caleb's arm was healing properly. Here she was, feeling things again. And she didn't know whether to be grateful or terrified. When Lily finally fell asleep, Evelyn tried to pull her hand away, but the girl held on tight, even in sleep, like she was afraid Evelyn would disappear. She likes you, Caleb said quietly. She doesn't know me. Kids have good instincts. They know who's safe and who's not. Evelyn finally managed to ease her hand free. I should get back to sleep. Evelyn, Caleb caught her arm gently. You asked me why I was taking Lily to Fort Collins. The truth is, we weren't going there for business. We were running away. She went still. From what? Her mother's family. They want to take Lily from me. Say a ranch is no place for a young girl, that she needs a proper home with women to raise her right. His grip tightened slightly. They're rich, connected. They could probably do it too. So you ran. So I ran. Thought if I could get far enough away, start over somewhere they wouldn't find us. He trailed off. Stupid plan. I know that now. Why are you telling me this? Because you saved our lives. You deserve to know what you saved. He let go of her arm. And because I think you understand what it's like to run from things that hurt too much to face. Evelyn wanted to deny it. Wanted to tell him he was wrong. That she wasn't running. That she'd made a choice to be alone. But the words died in her throat because they both knew the truth. Get some sleep, she said instead. We'll figure out the food situation in the morning. She climbed back to her loft and lay there in the dark, listening to the storm rage and 2 people breathe below her, and wondered what the hell she'd gotten herself into. The storm finally broke on the 4th day. Evelyn woke to silence, the kind of silence that only comes after days of wind screaming like something dying. She lay still in her loft, listening to nothing, and felt the absence of sound like a physical weight lifting off her chest. Then she heard Lily's voice downstairs, soft and excited. Papa, look, I can see the trees. Evelyn climbed down to find them both at the window, pressing their faces against the frost-covered glass. Outside, the world was buried under 4 feet of snow, but the sky was clearing, patches of blue showing through the gray. Storm's over, Caleb said, turning to look at her. His face was gaunt. They'd been on quarter rations for 2 days now, and it showed on all of them. I'm going hunting. Not alone, you're not. Evelyn, you don't know these mountains. You'll get lost or fall through ice or walk right into a bear den. She started pulling on her heavy coat. I'm coming with you. What about Lily? They both looked at the little girl, who was still staring out the window like she'd never seen sky before. "She stays here," Evelyn said. "Door stays barred. Fire stays lit. She doesn't open it for anyone but us." Lily turned around, her eyes going wide. "You're leaving me alone?" "Just for a few hours," Caleb said, kneeling down in front of her. "We need to find food. You understand that, right?" Lily nodded, but Evelyn could see the fear crawling into her expression. This was a kid who'd just spent 4 days trapped in a tiny cabin, listening to a storm try to kill them. Being left alone probably sounded like the worst thing in the world. "Hey," Evelyn said, surprising herself. "You know how to tend a fire?" Lily shook her head. "Then I'll teach you before we go. That way you've got a job to do, something important." She spent the next 20 minutes showing Lily how to add wood, how to check the draw, how to bank coals if the flames got too high. Lily listened with intense concentration, like Evelyn was teaching her how to fly. "You got all that?" Evelyn asked. "I think so." "You think so, or you know so?" "I know so." Lily's voice was stronger now, steadier. "Good. Because we're trusting you to keep this place warm. Can you do that?" Lily straightened up. "Yes, ma'am." Something about the way she said it, so serious, so determined, made Evelyn's throat tight. She turned away quickly, grabbing her rifle. "We'll be back before dark," she told Lily. "No matter what. You hear me?" "I hear you." Caleb kissed his daughter's forehead and whispered something Evelyn couldn't hear. Then he barred the door behind them and they set out into the snow. It was brutal going. The drifts came up to their thighs in places, and the cold was so sharp it felt like breathing knives. But Evelyn had walked these mountains in worse conditions. She led the way, following game trails she'd memorized over 5 winters, reading signs in the snow that Caleb would have walked right past. "There," she said after an hour, pointing to tracks. "Elk, big one by the size of those prints, came through here this morning." "How can you tell it was this morning?" "Snow's still crumbling at the edges. Older tracks would have frozen solid by now." They followed the trail higher into the mountains, moving slowly and carefully. Evelyn's stomach was a knot of hunger, but she ignored it. She'd been hungry before. "You didn't die from a few days of short rations." "Can I ask you something?" Caleb said after a while. "Seems like that's all you do." He smiled, just a little. "Why'd you really let us stay? And don't say it was because of Lily's screaming. You could have fired warning shots and left us outside." Evelyn kept walking, watching the tracks. "Maybe I'm not as much of a bastard as I think I am." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one you're getting." They walked in silence for another few minutes. The tracks led them to a clearing where the elk had stopped to dig for grass under the snow, fresh droppings. They were close. "I think," Caleb said quietly, "you let us in because you're tired of being alone, even if you won't admit it." Evelyn stopped walking. "You don't know anything about me. I know you spent 5 years hiding from the world because losing your family broke something inside you. I know, because the same thing happened to me." He paused. "Difference is, I had Lily to keep me from disappearing completely. You didn't have anyone." "I chose not to have anyone." "Did you? Or did you just convince yourself that being alone was better than risking that kind of pain again?" Evelyn turned to face him, anger rising hot in her chest. "You want to psychoanalyze me? Fine. You're right. I'm alone because everyone I ever loved died screaming and there wasn't a damn thing I could do to stop it. I held my son while he burned up with fever. I watched my daughter cough up blood. I buried my husband and both my children in the same week. And then I came up here because if I stayed in that town one more day, I was going to put a gun in my mouth. So yeah, I'm alone. And I'm going to stay that way because I am never, ever going through that again." Her voice had gotten louder with each word. By the end, she was almost shouting. Caleb just looked at her. "I understand." "You don't?" "I do. Because I felt the same way after Margaret died. I wanted to die too. Some days I still do." He met her eyes. "But then Lily looks at me like I'm her whole world. And I remember that pain isn't the only thing that makes us human. Connection is too. Love is too. Even when it hurts." "Well, congratulations on being so well adjusted. Some of us aren't there yet." "I'm not well adjusted. I'm barely holding it together most days." He took a step closer. "But I'm trying. And I think, deep down, you're trying too. Otherwise, you would have left us outside." Evelyn wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he was wrong about everything, but the words wouldn't come because maybe he wasn't entirely wrong. "The elk's getting away," she said instead. "We should move." She started walking again, and after a moment Caleb followed. They tracked the elk for another hour before they finally spotted it. A massive bull with a rack that would have been impressive even in better times. It was digging through snow about 50 yards away, oblivious to them. Evelyn raised her rifle slowly. One shot. That's all she'd get before it bolted. She took a breath, let it out, squeezed the trigger. The elk dropped. "Good shot," Caleb said. "It's what I do." Evelyn was already moving toward the kill. "Come on, we need to field dress it before—" The growl came from behind them. They both turned. The wolf was maybe 30 feet away, emerging from the trees. Then another, and another. 5 of them total, spreading out in a semicircle. "Back away slowly," Evelyn said, her voice level despite the fear crawling up her spine. "Don't run. Don't turn your back." "The elk." "Forget the elk. We need to get out of here." But the wolves weren't interested in letting them leave. They moved closer, teeth bared, hackles raised. These weren't the same wolves from the storm. These were starving, desperate, dangerous. Evelyn raised her rifle. "Get behind me!" "Like hell!" "I said get behind me!" She fired a shot over the lead wolf's head. It yelped and backed up, but the others kept coming. "Caleb, I need you to grab a branch, anything you can use as a weapon." He snatched up a fallen limb without arguing. The wolves circled closer. Evelyn fired again, hitting one in the shoulder. It screamed and retreated, but that just made the others more aggressive. They started darting in and out, testing for weakness. "There's too many," Caleb said. "I know." "What do we do?" Evelyn didn't have an answer. She had maybe 3 shots left, 5 wolves. Even if she hit every shot, they'd still be overrun. Then she heard it, a sound like thunder getting closer. She looked up and her blood went cold. Avalanche. "Run!" she screamed. They ran, crashing through snow, branches whipping at their faces. Behind them, the wolves scattered. Behind that, a wall of snow and ice roared down the mountain, swallowing everything in its path. Evelyn's lungs were burning. Her legs felt like lead. She could hear Caleb behind her, could hear the avalanche getting closer, could feel the ground shaking beneath her feet. There. A cluster of boulders, half buried in snow. Not much shelter, but it was something. "There!" she shouted. "Get behind the rocks!" They dove behind the boulders just as the avalanche hit. Snow crashed over them, around them, burying the world in white. Evelyn pressed herself against the rock and felt Caleb's arms around her, both of them holding on like they could keep each other from being swept away. The roar was deafening. Evelyn couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but hold on and wait to die. Then, slowly, the sound faded. The snow settled. Silence. Evelyn opened her eyes. They were half buried, but alive. The boulders had sheltered them from the worst of it. "You okay?" she gasped. Caleb was coughing, spitting out snow. Yeah, I think so." He looked at her and his eyes were wide. "That was close. That was too close." They dug themselves out and surveyed the damage. The clearing where they'd shot the elk was completely buried. The wolves were gone. Everything was gone. And they were miles from the cabin with no food and darkness coming fast. "We need to move," Evelyn said. "Now!" They half ran, half stumbled back the way they'd come, following their own tracks where the avalanche hadn't erased them. The sky was already turning orange. They had maybe 2 hours of light left. Evelyn's mind was racing. Lily was alone. They'd promised to be back before dark. If they didn't make it, the girl would be terrified. Might even try to come looking for them. "Faster," she said, even though they were already pushing as hard as they could. Caleb didn't argue. He just kept pace beside her, his breathing labored, his injured arm clutched against his chest. The sun was touching the horizon when the cabin finally came into view. Evelyn had never been so relieved to see that rundown structure in her life. She pounded on the door. "Lily, it's us! Open up!" The bar scraped. The door flew open. Lily stood there, her face streaked with tears. "You were gone so long," she said. "I thought—" Caleb scooped her up, holding her tight. "We're okay. We're here. Everything's okay." But it wasn't okay. They were back with no food, no prospects, and less daylight to work with tomorrow. Evelyn closed the door and leaned against it, exhaustion crashing over her like a wave. They were going to starve, all three of them, unless she figured something out. That night, Evelyn lay in her loft and did math she didn't want to do. They had maybe 2 days of food left if they stretched it. 3 if they basically stopped eating altogether. The storm might have passed, but the snow was too deep for Caleb to leave on foot. And even if he could somehow make it down the mountain, he'd be leaving Lily alone with a woman he barely knew. She could ration their food down to nothing and hope someone came looking for them. But who? Nobody knew they were here. Nobody would think to check. They were trapped, and they were running out of time. Evelyn closed her eyes and saw her children's faces, saw them wasting away while she watched helplessly. Felt that same crushing helplessness settling over her now. No, she wouldn't let it happen again. Not to Lily, not to any of them. She climbed down from the loft. Caleb was sitting by the fire, staring into the flames. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "Can you?" "No." He rubbed his face. "I keep thinking about tomorrow, about what we're going to do." Evelyn sat down across from him. "I have an idea. You're not going to like it. Try me. There's a trapper's cache about 6 miles west of here. Old guy who used to work these mountains died a few years back. His supplies are probably still there. 6 miles in this snow? I've done worse." "Not on an empty stomach, you haven't." Caleb shook his head. "It's too dangerous. More dangerous than starving. You could get lost, fall through ice, run into more wolves." "I could. Or I could find enough food to keep us alive until the snow melts enough for you to leave." They stared at each other across the fire. "I'll go," Caleb said finally. "You don't know where it is? Then draw me a map. You'll die out there. Better me than you." "Why?" Evelyn demanded. "Why does it have to be you?" "Because Lily needs you." The words hung in the air between them. Evelyn felt something twist in her chest. She needs her father. She needs someone who knows how to survive up here. Someone who won't give up on her if things get hard. Caleb's voice was rough. "That's you, not me." "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I? I've watched you with her these past few days. You're good with her, patient, kind, even when you're trying not to be. She trusts you. She barely knows me. And yet she looks at you the way she used to look at her mother." Caleb leaned forward. "If something happens to me out there, I need to know she'll be okay. And the only way I know that is if you're here." Evelyn wanted to argue, wanted to tell him that she was the last person anyone should trust with a child, but she saw the desperation in his face and knew he was serious. "Nothing's happening to you," she said, "because you're not going. I am." "Evelyn, I know these mountains. You don't. That's not arrogance, that's just fact." She stood up. "I leave at first light. You stay here with Lily. Keep her safe and keep her warm. Can you do that?" Caleb stood too. "I don't like this." "You don't have to like it. You just have to trust me." "I do trust you. That's the problem." He ran a hand through his hair. "What if you don't come back?" "Then you wait 3 days. If I'm not back by then, I'm not coming back. You take Lily and head down the mountain as fast as you can. Evelyn, promise me." He looked like he wanted to argue more. Instead, he just nodded. 3 days. 3 days, she agreed. They stood there in the firelight, and Evelyn felt the weight of what she was about to do settle over her. She could die out there. Probably would die if she was being honest. The odds of making it to the cache and back alive were maybe 50-50 at best, but the odds of all 3 of them surviving without food were 0. So really, it wasn't even a choice. "Get some sleep," she told Caleb. "You're going to need it." She started to turn away, but he caught her hand. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for everything." Evelyn looked down at their joined hands. When was the last time someone had touched her with anything other than fear or necessity? When was the last time it felt like this, warm and solid and real? "Don't thank me yet," she said. "I might not make it back." "You will." His grip tightened slightly. "You're too stubborn to die." She almost smiled. "We'll see." She pulled away and climbed back to her loft, but she didn't sleep. She lay there in the dark, listening to Caleb pace below and Lily's soft breathing, and tried not to think about all the ways tomorrow could go wrong. Evelyn left before sunrise, while Lily was still asleep. She didn't say goodbye. Goodbyes felt too final, and she wasn't ready to admit this might be the last time she saw either of them. Caleb walked her to the door. 3 days, he reminded her. I know. Be careful. Always am. She started to leave, but he caught her arm again. This was becoming a habit. Evelyn, if you... He stopped, struggling for words. If you make it back, there's something I want to talk to you about. Something important. What is it? Not now. When you get back. He let go of her arm. Just come back, okay? Evelyn didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded and stepped out into the pre-dawn darkness. The journey was even harder than she'd anticipated. The snow was deep and treacherous, and she had to move slowly to avoid breaking through crust into hidden crevasses. Every step was exhausting. Every breath burned. But she kept moving. She thought about Lily's face when she taught her to tend the fire, about the way Caleb had held his daughter during the nightmare, about how, for the first time in 5 years, her cabin had felt like something other than a tomb. She thought about what Caleb had said, that pain wasn't the only thing that made us human. Maybe he was right. Maybe she'd spent so long protecting herself from hurt that she'd forgotten what it felt like to care about people. Really care. The kind of caring that made you walk 6 miles through snow on an empty stomach, because the alternative was watching a little girl starve. The sun came up slowly, turning the snow pink and gold. It would have been beautiful if Evelyn had energy left to appreciate it. As it was, she just put her head down and kept walking. The cache was right where she remembered it, a small cave sealed with rocks and wood. She dug through the snow with numb fingers, pulled away the barrier, and crawled inside. Jackpot. The old trapper had left behind dried meat, canned goods, flour, even some coffee, enough to keep 3 people alive for weeks if they were careful. Evelyn wanted to cry. Instead, she loaded everything she could carry into her pack and started the journey back. The return trip was worse than the trip out. The pack was heavy, the day was getting colder, and Evelyn's body was starting to give out. Her legs shook. Her vision blurred. She stumbled and fell more than once, each time taking longer to get back up. 3 miles from the cabin, she fell and couldn't get up. She lay there in the snow, breathing hard, telling herself to move. Just move. Get up and walk. Lily was waiting. Caleb was waiting. But her body wasn't listening. Maybe she'd just rest here for a minute. Just a minute, then she'd get up and keep going. Her eyes started to close. Then she heard Caleb's voice in her head. You're too stubborn to die. Evelyn opened her eyes. Yeah, she muttered. Too damn stubborn. She forced herself to her feet, picked up the pack, and started walking again. The cabin appeared through the trees just as the sun was setting. Evelyn had been gone almost 14 hours. She felt like she'd been gone a year. She knocked on the door with what little strength she had left. Caleb, it's me. The door flew open. Caleb stood there, his face flooding with relief. Thank God, he breathed. I thought, help me with this. He took the pack from her shoulders, and she nearly collapsed without its weight. He caught her, one arm around her waist, and helped her inside. Lily was asleep again, curled up by the fire. Did you? Caleb started to ask, then saw the pack. His eyes went wide. Is that food? Enough for a while. Evelyn, his voice cracked. You actually... Yeah, I did. She sank down into her chair, her whole body shaking from exhaustion. Told you I'd come back. Caleb just stared at her for a moment. Then he did something that shocked them both. He pulled her into a hug. Evelyn froze. She couldn't remember the last time someone had hugged her. It felt strange and uncomfortable and oddly right all at the same time. Thank you, he said into her hair. Thank you. She patted his back awkwardly. You're welcome. Now let me go before I pass out on you. He released her, but his hands lingered on her shoulders. You're incredible. You know that. I'm tired. That's what I am. Evelyn, food first. Whatever you want to say can wait until I've eaten something. He looked like he wanted to argue, but finally nodded and started unpacking the supplies. Evelyn watched him move around her cabin, their cabin now, she supposed, and felt something shift inside her. When was the last time her space had felt like a home instead of a hiding place? When was the last time she'd wanted it to? Lily woke up to the smell of real food cooking. Her face lit up like Evelyn had hung the moon. "You came back," the girl said, running over to throw her arms around Evelyn's legs. "Course I did. Said I would, didn't I?" "I was scared you wouldn't." Evelyn looked down at this little girl who'd somehow wormed her way past every defense Evelyn had and felt her throat get tight. "I keep my promises," she said softly. "Remember that." They ate dinner together that night. Real dinner, not the starvation rations they'd been choking down. And for the first time since the strangers had stumbled into her cabin, Evelyn let herself wonder what it would be like if they didn't leave. What if they stayed? What if this brokenness they all carried could somehow fit together into something that resembled whole? Dangerous thoughts. The kind of thoughts that got people hurt. But sitting there with Caleb and Lily, watching firelight dance across their faces, Evelyn couldn't quite bring herself to push the thoughts away. Maybe, just maybe, she was tired of being alone. The snow started melting 2 weeks later, and with it came the reality that Caleb and Lily would have to leave soon. Evelyn told herself she was relieved. Her life could go back to normal. No more sharing space, no more splitting food, no more little girl following her around asking 1,000 questions about everything. She'd have her solitude back. She told herself this while teaching Lily how to set snares, while watching Caleb repair the cabin's sagging porch, while sitting by the fire at night listening to them talk about memories of Margaret and feeling like an intruder in her own home. She told herself this, and she didn't believe a word of it. "The past should be clear in another week," Caleb said one morning, studying the mountains through the window. "Maybe less if this warm spell holds." Evelyn felt something drop in her stomach. "That's good. You'll be able to get back to your ranch." "Yeah." He didn't sound happy about it. "We should probably start preparing, make sure we have enough supplies for the journey down. I'll put together some provisions, enough to get you to the nearest town." They were being so careful with each other, so polite, like they were strangers again instead of people who'd spent 2 weeks living in each other's pockets, sharing meals and stories and the kind of comfortable silence that only came from real familiarity. Lily was the only one being honest about any of it. "I don't want to leave," she announced at dinner that night. "Sweetheart," Caleb started, "we have to—" "But I like it here. I like Evelyn. I like learning things and helping with chores and—" She looked at Evelyn with those big dark eyes. "Don't you want us to stay?" Evelyn's throat went tight. "It's not about what I want. Your papa has a ranch, a life. You can't just abandon that." "Why not? You abandoned your old life. That's different." "How?" "Because I—" Evelyn stopped. "Because I had nothing left to live for. Because I was running away from ghosts. Because I'm not brave enough to face the world again." "It just is." Lily's bottom lip trembled. "You don't want us here." "I didn't say that." "You didn't have to." The girl pushed away from the table and ran to the cot, burying her face in the blankets. Caleb stood up. "I should— let me," Evelyn said, surprising herself. She went to sit beside Lily, who was crying softly into the pillow. Evelyn put a hand on the girl's back, feeling awkward and uncertain. "Hey," she said quietly. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings." "You don't like us," Lily sobbed. "You're just waiting for us to leave." "That's not true." "Then why won't you ask us to stay?" Evelyn closed her eyes. How could she explain this to a 6-year-old? How could she make her understand that wanting someone to stay and being able to handle them staying were two completely different things? "It's complicated," she said finally. "That's what grown-ups say when they don't want to tell the truth." Evelyn almost smiled at that. "You're right. It is." She took a breath. "The truth is, I do like having you here. Both of you. More than I expected to. More than I'm comfortable with, honestly." Lily turned over, her face blotchy from crying. "Then why—" "Because I'm scared." The words came out before Evelyn could stop them. "I'm scared of caring about people again. Last time I did that, I lost them. All of them. And it nearly killed me. But we're not going to die. You don't know that. Nobody knows that. People die all the time, Lily. Good people. People you love, and there's nothing you can do to stop it." Lily sat up, wiping her eyes. "Mama used to say that being scared is okay, but hiding from things because you're scared just makes you lonely. Evelyn felt like she'd been punched. Your mama sounds like she was pretty smart. She was. Lily looked down at her hands. I miss her every day, but I'm glad I had her, even if it hurts now that she's gone. Papa says that's what love is. It's worth the hurt. Your papa's wrong. Is he? Lily met her eyes. Because I think you're lonely, and I think we make you less lonely, and I think that scares you more than anything. Out of the mouths of children, Evelyn stood up, needing distance. You should get some sleep, she said. It's late. Evelyn, good night, Lily. She walked away before the girl could say anything else, before those words could dig any deeper under her skin. But she felt Caleb watching her from across the room, and she knew he'd heard every word. Later that night, after Lily had fallen asleep, he came to sit beside Evelyn by the fire. She's not wrong, you know, he said quietly. Don't. You are lonely, and we do make it better. I've seen it. The way you smile when Lily does something clever. The way you've stopped flinching every time one of us gets too close. Caleb, just listen, please. He turned to face her. I know you're scared. I get it. But hiding up here for the rest of your life isn't living. It's just dying slowly. That's my choice to make. It is. But what if there was another choice? He hesitated. Come with us. Evelyn stared at him. What? Come back to the ranch with us. Not as a guest or a charity case, as, he struggled for the right words, as someone who belongs there. I don't belong anywhere. That's not true. You belong here with us. Lily needs you. He stopped, swallowed hard. I need you. Evelyn felt panic rising in her chest. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. These past 2 weeks living here with you, it's been the first time since Margaret died that I've felt like myself again. Like there might be a future worth living for. He reached for her hand. Don't you feel it too? She did. That was the problem. She felt it every time Lily laughed at something Evelyn taught her. Every time Caleb's hand brushed hers while they worked. Every time she woke up and heard them breathing in the darkness and felt something other than empty. It won't work, she said, pulling her hand away. Your ranch is probably huge, full of people, society. I can't do that. I wouldn't fit. So we'll make it fit. We'll figure it out together. You don't understand. I'm not... She gestured helplessly at herself. I'm not the kind of woman who belongs in someone's life. I'm broken, damaged. I'll just drag you both down. You saved our lives, twice. You hiked 6 miles through snow to keep us from starving. You're teaching my daughter how to survive in a world that's tried to kill her. His voice was fierce. You're not broken. You're the strongest person I've ever met. You're romanticizing me. Once you get back to your real life, you'll see I'm right. Then prove me wrong. Come with us. Give it a month. If you hate it, if you don't fit, you can leave. I'll give you enough money to go wherever you want. No questions asked. Evelyn wanted to say no. Wanted to send them away and lock herself back in this cabin and pretend the last 2 weeks had never happened. But Lily's words kept echoing in her head. Being scared is okay, but hiding from things because you're scared just makes you lonely. 1 month, she heard herself say. Caleb's face lit up. Really? 1 month. Then I'm gone. And you don't try to stop me. Deal. He grabbed her hand again, squeezing tight. You won't regret this. I already regret it, Evelyn muttered, but she didn't pull her hand away. They left the cabin 3 days later as soon as the pass was navigable. Evelyn packed only what she could carry, some clothes, her rifle, a few personal items that had survived from her old life. Everything else stayed behind, waiting for her inevitable return. Because she would return. She was certain of it. This was a mistake going with them. She'd last maybe a week before the anxiety and the memories and the sheer wrongness of being around people drove her back to the mountains. But Lily was so excited that Evelyn couldn't bring herself to back out. We're going to have so much fun, the girl said, practically bouncing as they walked. I'll show you the horses and the chickens and my room and... Lily, breathe, Caleb said, smiling. Let Evelyn adjust before you overwhelm her. I'm not overwhelmed. You look overwhelmed, he said quietly, so only she could hear. I'm fine. You're gripping that rifle like it's the only thing keeping you upright. Evelyn loosened her grip slightly. habit. They walked for hours, descending through melting snow and mud, following game trails that gradually widened into something resembling a road. With each step, Evelyn felt her anxiety growing. What was she doing? She didn't know how to be around people anymore, didn't know how to make small talk or follow social rules or pretend to care about things that didn't matter. "Hey," Caleb said, falling back to walk beside her. "You're thinking too loud." "I don't know what that means." "It means I can see you spiraling. Stop it." "I'm not spiraling." "You're absolutely spiraling." He bumped her shoulder gently. "It's going to be okay. I promise." "You can't promise that." "Watch me." He smiled at her, and despite everything, Evelyn felt some of the tension ease from her shoulders. They reached Caleb's ranch just after sunset 3 days later. Evelyn had been expecting something modest, a small house, maybe a barn, some animals. She was not expecting this. The main house was massive, 2 stories of solid timber and stone with a wraparound porch and windows that glowed with lamplight. Beyond it, she could see multiple outbuildings, corrals full of horses, and what looked like bunkhouses for ranch hands. This wasn't a ranch. This was an empire. "You said you had a ranch," Evelyn said faintly. "This is a ranch. This is—" She gestured helplessly. "How many people work here?" "About 30, give or take." "Why?" 30 people. Evelyn felt her chest tightening. "I can't do this." "Yes, you can." "Caleb, look at this place. Look at me. I don't belong here." He stopped walking and turned to face her. "You belong wherever you decide you belong, and I'm deciding you belong here. That's not how it works." "Sure it is. Watch." He raised his voice. "Dutch, get out here." A man emerged from one of the barns, tall, weathered, with a face that looked like it had been carved from granite. He took one look at Evelyn, and his eyes narrowed. "Who's this?" "This is Evelyn Mercer. She saved my life and Lily's during the storm. She's going to be staying with us for a while." Dutch looked her up and down, clearly skeptical. "Uh-huh. And where exactly is she staying?" "In the main house. We've got plenty of room." "Boss, you sure about this? You don't know nothing about this woman." "I know she's got more honor in her little finger than most people have in their whole body. That's enough for me." Caleb's voice was firm. "Spread the word. Anyone gives her trouble, they answer to me." Dutch still looked dubious, but he nodded. "Your ranch, boss. Your rules." He walked away, and Evelyn turned to Caleb. "That went well. He'll come around. They all will." "You're delusional." "Maybe, but I'm also right." He started toward the house. "Come on, let's get you settled." The inside of the house was even more overwhelming than the outside. High ceilings, expensive furniture, paintings on the walls. Evelyn felt like she was walking through a museum. A woman appeared from the kitchen, older, gray-haired, with kind eyes and flour on her apron. "Mr. Hart, thank heavens you're back. We were all so worried when the storm—" She stopped, seeing Evelyn. "Oh, who's this?" "Martha, this is Evelyn. She'll be staying with us. Can you prepare the blue room for her?" "Of course," Martha smiled at Evelyn. "Welcome, dear. I'm Martha Conway, the housekeeper. If you need anything at all, you just let me know." Evelyn didn't know what to say. She just nodded. Lily had already run off to explore, shouting something about checking on her dolls. Martha went to prepare the room, and Evelyn stood in the middle of this grand entrance hall, feeling more out of place than she'd ever felt in her life. "I can't stay here," she said. "You promised me a month." "I didn't know it would be like this." Caleb moved closer. "Like what?" "Like I'm a beggar he brought home out of pity." His expression hardened. "Is that really what you think? That I pity you? Don't you?" "No, I admire you, respect you, care about you." He paused. "But pity? Never." Evelyn wanted to believe him, but looking around at all this wealth and refinement, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was a wild thing that had been dragged into civilization against its will. "Give it a week," Caleb said quietly. "Just a week. If you still hate it, we'll talk about other arrangements." She almost argued, but she'd made a promise, and despite everything, she still kept those. "1 week," she said. "1 week," he agreed. Martha showed her to the blue room, which was bigger than her entire cabin and filled with furniture that probably cost more than Evelyn had earned in her entire life. There was a real bed with a feather mattress, a wardrobe, a vanity with a mirror. Evelyn looked at herself in that mirror and barely recognized what she saw. Wild hair, weather-beaten skin, clothes that were more patches than original fabric. She looked like exactly what she was, a woman who'd spent 5 years living alone in the mountains. There was a knock on the door. "Come in," Evelyn called. Lily peeked in, already changed into a clean nightgown. "Do you like your room? It's very nice. Mine's just down the hall, and Papa's is at the end, so we're all close together." "That's good." Lily came further into the room, looking uncertain. "Are you going to leave?" "What?" "I heard you and Papa talking. You said you can't stay here." The girl's eyes were filling with tears. "Are you going to leave like Mama did?" "Lily, no, I'm not." Evelyn knelt down in front of her. "I'm not leaving. Not yet. I promised your Papa I'd give this a try, and I keep my promises. Remember? But you don't like it here." "I didn't say that." "You don't have to. I can tell." Lily wiped her eyes. "It's okay if you want to go back to your cabin. I understand." She didn't understand, not really, but she was trying to be brave about it, and that made Evelyn's chest ache. "Hey," Evelyn said softly, "come here." Lily collapsed into her arms, and Evelyn held her, feeling the girl's thin shoulders shake with silent sobs. When was the last time she'd comforted a crying child? When was the last time she'd let herself care enough to want to? "I'm scared," Lily whispered. "Of what?" "That if you leave, Papa will be sad again. He's been happy since you came. I don't want him to stop being happy." Evelyn closed her eyes. "Your Papa's happiness isn't my responsibility." "I know, but..." Lily pulled back to look at her. "Don't you want to be happy too?" "I don't think I remember how." "Then maybe we can learn together." Such simple words from such a small person, but they hit Evelyn like a physical blow. "Maybe," she said quietly. "Maybe we can." The first few days were hell. The ranch hands stared at her like she was a circus attraction. The women from town who came to call, wealthy, refined, dripping with jewels, looked at her with barely concealed disdain. Even Martha, kind as she was, clearly didn't know what to make of a woman who preferred splitting wood to sitting in parlors. Evelyn felt like a fraud, like she was playing dress-up in someone else's life. But then Lily would find her and drag her outside to see the new foal or teach her about the different cattle breeds, and for a little while Evelyn would forget to feel out of place. And Caleb, he was different here, still himself, but bigger somehow, more confident. She watched him manage his ranch with the same calm competence he'd shown in the cabin, and she started to understand why 30 people followed his orders without question. He was a good man, a strong man, and she was falling for him. The realization hit her one morning while she was helping in the kitchen. She'd been reaching for flour at the same time as Caleb reached for coffee, and their hands brushed. It was nothing, barely contact at all, but Evelyn felt it like lightning. She jerked her hand back. "Sorry." "Don't be." He was looking at her with an expression she couldn't read. "Evelyn, can we talk? Privately?" Her stomach dropped. "Is something wrong?" "No, I just..." He glanced at Martha, who was very obviously pretending not to listen. "Let's go outside." They walked to the porch, and Evelyn's mind was racing. He was going to send her away. He'd realized she didn't fit here, and he was going to tell her to leave. "I know this hasn't been easy for you," Caleb started. "Here it comes. But I want you to know how grateful I am that you're trying, that you're here." Evelyn blinked. "You're not asking me to leave?" "What? No, why would I..." He stopped. "Is that what you thought this was about?" "I don't know, I just assumed..." "Evelyn, I don't want you to leave. I want..." He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "Hell, I'm not good at this." "Good at what?" "Talking, feelings, any of it." He met her eyes. "What I'm trying to say is that having you here, it means something to me. You mean something to me." Evelyn's heart was pounding. "Caleb, you don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know. Because there are people in town already talking, saying you're here to trap me, or that I'm taking advantage of you, or..." His jaw tightened. "It's all garbage. But I don't want you hearing it from them. I want you to hear from me that this, whatever this is between us, it's real. At least it is for me." Evelyn didn't know what to say. Part of her wanted to run, to put distance between them before this went any further and someone got hurt. But another part, the part that had been buried for 5 years, wanted to step closer, to see what might happen if she let herself want something again. "I don't know how to do this," she said finally. "Do what?" "Any of it. Be around people. Care about people. I'm so far out of practice I don't even know where to start. Then we'll figure it out together. No pressure, no expectations, just," he smiled slightly, "just us, taking it one day at a time. And if I mess it up, then we'll deal with it. Together." That word again, together, like it was the easiest thing in the world. Maybe for him it was. Evelyn took a breath. "Okay. Okay? One day at a time. We'll see what happens." The smile that broke across his face was worth every moment of fear. Chets. Word spread fast that Caleb Hart was courting the strange mountain woman he'd brought home, and the gossip that followed was vicious. Evelyn heard it everywhere she went. The women at the general store whispering behind their hands. The ranch hands making crude jokes when they thought she couldn't hear. The church ladies who stopped by to welcome her with eyes full of judgment and mouths full of acid. "She's clearly after his money," one of them said, not even bothering to lower her voice. "Poor man probably doesn't even realize he's being manipulated." Evelyn had walked away before she did something she'd regret, but the comments kept coming. About her clothes, her manners, her complete lack of social graces. About how Caleb deserved better, how Lily deserved a real mother figure, not some wild woman who probably couldn't even read. She could read. Had read more books than most of these shallow socialites would in their lifetimes. But that didn't matter to them. They'd already decided who she was. It came to a head at a dinner party Caleb insisted on hosting, some kind of social obligation he couldn't get out of. He'd asked Evelyn to attend, and she'd agreed because she was trying, really trying. She wore one of the dresses Martha had helped her buy, simple, modest, nothing like the elaborate gowns the other women wore. She sat at that long dining table and tried to follow conversations about people she'd never met and places she'd never been, and felt more alone than she'd ever felt in her cabin. The woman across from her, Mrs. Victoria Sterling, wife of the largest landowner in 3 counties, kept looking at Evelyn like she was something unpleasant stuck to her shoe. "So, Miss Mercer," she said, her voice dripping false sweetness, "Caleb tells us you lived alone in the mountains for quite some time. How rustic." "It suited me," Evelyn said quietly. "I'm sure it did. Some people simply aren't meant for civilized society." She took a delicate sip of wine. "Of course, it must be quite overwhelming for you now. All these rules and expectations, so different from living like a hermit." Evelyn felt her jaw tighten. Beside her, Caleb's hand found hers under the table, squeezing gently. "Evelyn's adapted remarkably well," he said, his voice pleasant but with an edge to it. "She's one of the most capable people I've ever met." "Oh, I'm sure she's very capable, at survival skills and such." Victoria's smile was sharp. "But surely you can see, Caleb, that capability in the wilderness doesn't translate to being a suitable companion for a man of your standing." The table went quiet. "Excuse me?" Caleb's voice was dangerously soft. "I'm simply saying what everyone's thinking. You're a prominent man, Caleb. You have a daughter to think of. Surely she needs someone more—" Victoria waved a hand vaguely. "Refined to look up to." Evelyn stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "If you'll excuse me." She walked out of the dining room, through the house, out onto the porch. Her hands were shaking with anger and hurt and shame, because Victoria was right. Evelyn didn't belong here. She was a fraud playing at being civilized, and everyone could see it. Behind her, she heard the door open. "Don't," she said without turning. "Whatever you're going to say, Caleb, just don't." "She's wrong." "She's not." Evelyn turned to face him. "Look at me. Really look. I don't fit in your world. I never will. I don't care about fitting in." "Well, I do, because every day I'm here, people look at me like I'm dirt you tracked in on your boots. And you know what the worst part is? They're not entirely wrong. Evelyn, I can't be what you need me to be. I can't be refined or educated or whatever it is these people expect. I'm just," her voice cracked, "I'm just me. And that's not enough." Caleb closed the distance between them in 2 strides. You're wrong. Don't. He kissed her. It was brief, fierce, and completely unexpected. When he pulled back, Evelyn was staring at him in shock. You're wrong, he repeated. You're more than enough. You're everything. You don't mean that. I do, and I'll prove it. He took her hands. I don't care what those people think. I don't care if they approve. The only thing I care about is you and Lily, and building something real with both of you. Evelyn felt tears threatening. Why? Because you make me feel alive again. Because Lily hasn't smiled this much since her mother died. Because when I think about my future, you're in it, and I can't imagine it any other way. Caleb, I love you. The words hung in the air between them. You don't, Evelyn whispered. I do. I have for weeks now, maybe since the moment you opened that cabin door. He cupped her face gently. I know you're scared. I know this is hard, but please don't give up on us. Not yet. Evelyn closed her eyes. She could feel herself breaking open, all those carefully constructed walls crumbling. It terrified her, but standing here with Caleb's hands on her face and his heart laid bare, she realized something. She didn't want to run anymore. I don't know how to do this, she said, opening her eyes. I don't know how to let someone in, how to trust that they won't leave or die, or one day at a time, remember? This is more than one day at a time, then one moment at a time, one breath at a time. Whatever you need, Evelyn. I'm not going anywhere. She searched his face, looking for the lie, the catch, the inevitable disappointment. But all she saw was sincerity and hope and something that looked terrifyingly close to love. Okay, she whispered. Okay? I'll stay, really stay. Not just for a month. She took a shaky breath. I'll try. The smile that broke across his face was radiant. He pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was something precious. And Evelyn let herself be held. For the first time in 5 years, she let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she deserved this. Inside the house, she could hear Victoria and the other guests leaving, their voices sharp with disapproval. Let them talk. Let them judge. Evelyn had spent 5 years hiding from life. She was done hiding. Whatever came next, good or bad, painful or beautiful, she would face it. With Caleb, with Lily, with a family she'd never expected to find. The next morning, Victoria Sterling's poisonous dinner commentary had spread through town like wildfire. Evelyn heard about it from Martha, who'd heard it from the butcher's wife, who'd heard it directly from Victoria herself at the mercantile. Apparently you're a gold-digging harlot who's bewitched poor Mr. Hart with your mountain magic, Martha said, kneading bread dough with more force than necessary. That woman has a tongue sharper than any knife I own. Evelyn was helping shell peas at the kitchen table. Let her talk. You're not bothered. I've been called worse. She split another pod, the peas rattling into the bowl. Besides, being bothered won't change her mind. People like that have already decided who I am. Martha studied her. You're stronger than you look. I've had practice. What Evelyn didn't say was that Victoria's words had burrowed under her skin and were festering there. Not because they were wrong, she'd made peace with not fitting in, but because they threatened the fragile thing building between her and Caleb, because they reminded her that his world would never fully accept her. And eventually, that might matter. Caleb found her later that afternoon in the barn, mucking out stalls. She'd volunteered for the job despite Martha's protests that ladies don't do that sort of work. Evelyn needed the physical labor. It kept her hands busy and her mind quiet. You hiding from me? Caleb asked, leaning against the stall door. Just working. You know we have hands who do this, right? I like doing it myself. She kept shoveling. Makes me feel useful. You are useful, more than useful. Evelyn didn't answer. She heard him step into the stall, heard him pick up the second shovel. What are you doing? She asked. Helping. You don't need to. I know. I want to. He started working beside her. They fell into an easy rhythm, the kind that came from two people who understood physical labor and didn't need to fill silence with talking. After a while, Caleb said, I heard about what Victoria's been saying. Of course you did. Everyone's heard. I'm going to talk to her. Tell her to stop spreading lies. Don't. Evelyn paused in her work. It'll just make it worse. Make it look like I need you to fight my battles. She's attacking your character. My character can handle it. She met his eyes. But if you want to help, stop worrying about what people like her think. It doesn't matter. It matters if it hurts you. I've survived worse than gossip, Caleb. She went back to shoveling. A bunch of bored rich women with nothing better to do than tear down someone different? That's nothing. He was quiet for a moment. You're really not going to let this get to you, are you? Nope. Stubborn woman. You knew that when you kissed me. He smiled at that. Yeah, I did. They finished the stalls in comfortable silence, and Evelyn felt some of the tension ease from her shoulders. This was what she could handle. Honest work, straight talk, no games. As long as she had that, she could deal with whatever the town threw at her. But the town wasn't done yet. 3 days later, a lawyer showed up at the ranch. Tall, thin, with wire-rimmed spectacles and a briefcase that looked expensive enough to feed a family for a month. I'm looking for Mr. Caleb Hart, he announced when Martha answered the door. Caleb was summoned from the south pasture. Evelyn watched from the kitchen window as the two men talked on the porch, watched Caleb's expression go from confused to angry to something that looked like fear. When he came inside, his face was pale. What is it? Evelyn asked. Margaret's parents. They filed a petition with the court. His voice was tight. They're suing for custody of Lily. The bottom dropped out of Evelyn's stomach. They can do that? Apparently. He sank into a chair, running his hands through his hair. Their lawyer says they have grounds, that I'm an unfit parent because He stopped, swallowing hard. Because I'm keeping inappropriate company, exposing Lily to moral corruption. Evelyn felt cold all over. They mean me. It's garbage. Complete garbage. But their lawyer seems to think he can make it stick. Caleb looked up at her, and she saw panic in his eyes. They're using you as ammunition, saying that I'm so desperate for female companionship that I've brought a stranger into my home without any regard for my daughter's well-being. Then I'll leave. What? No. If me being here is giving them ammunition, then I'll leave. Go back to the mountains. They can't use me against you if I'm gone. Caleb stood up, crossing to her. I'm not letting you leave. I'm not giving up on us because of them. This isn't about us. This is about Lily. About you keeping your daughter. And what kind of father would I be if I threw you away the second things got hard? What would that teach her? His hands gripped her shoulders. No, we fight this together. Caleb, I'm not losing you, and I'm not losing Lily. So we're going to figure this out. Evelyn wanted to argue, wanted to point out that the smart thing, the strategic thing, was for her to disappear and let him present himself as a respectable widower who'd made a temporary error in judgment. But looking at his face, seeing his determination, she couldn't bring herself to say it. Okay, she said quietly. We fight. The custody hearing was set for 3 weeks later. 3 weeks for Margaret's parents, the Ashfords, wealthy Boston industrialists, to build their case. 3 weeks for Caleb to prove he was a fit father despite his poor choice in companionship. Dutch approached Evelyn one evening while she was feeding the horses. Got a minute? He asked. Evelyn tensed. She and Dutch had maintained a careful distance since her arrival. He'd been polite but cool, clearly reserving judgment. What do you need? Wanted to say something about all this custody business. He leaned against the fence. I've worked for Mr. Hart for 15 years. Watched him build this ranch from nothing. Watched him fall apart when Miss Margaret died. And I watched him start putting himself back together when you showed up. Evelyn didn't know what to say to that. Point is, Dutch continued, those Ashford people don't know a damn thing about being a good parent. They didn't even come to their own daughter's funeral, too busy with their society functions in Boston. He spat in the dirt. Mr. Hart's a good man and a good father, and if having you around makes him better at both those things, then I don't care what the town gossips say. Why are you telling me this? Because you look like you're thinking about running, and I'm telling you not to. Lily needs you. Boss needs you. Hell, this whole ranch runs smoother when you're around, keeping everyone on their toes. He met her eyes. So stay, and help us fight these bastards. Evelyn felt something loosen in her chest. I'm not going anywhere. Good. Dutch pushed off the fence. Also, some of the hands want to testify about what kind of father the boss is, how happy Lily's been since you came. Thought you should know. He walked away before Evelyn could respond, leaving her staring after him in surprise. She'd been so focused on the people who hated her that she'd missed the ones who didn't. The ranch hands who'd seen her work alongside them and respected it. Martha, who'd become something close to a friend. Even some of the townspeople who'd been quietly kind despite the gossip. She wasn't as alone as she thought. That night, Lily climbed into bed beside Evelyn. They'd fallen into a routine. After dinner, Lily would come to Evelyn's room and they'd read together. Tonight, though, the girl seemed anxious. "Papa's scared," she said quietly. "I know. Are my grandparents really going to take me away?" Evelyn chose her words carefully. "They're going to try, but your papa's going to fight to keep you." "Will it work?" "I don't know, sweetheart. I hope so." Lily was quiet for a moment. Then, "It's because of you, isn't it? Because people don't like you being here." Evelyn felt her throat tighten. "Partly, yes. That's stupid. A lot of things in life are stupid. Doesn't make them less real." Lily looked up at her with those serious dark eyes. "If you left, would they stop trying to take me?" "Maybe. Probably. Then why don't you leave?" "Because your papa asked me to stay, and because—" Evelyn paused. "Because I don't want to leave, not anymore." "Even though people are mean to you? Even though—" Lily thought about this. "Mama used to say that doing the right thing is usually the hard thing. Is that what you're doing, the hard thing?" "I'm trying to." "Good." Lily snuggled closer. "I'm glad you're staying, even if my grandparents are mean about it." Evelyn held the girl and felt something shift inside her. She'd been so focused on whether she belonged here that she'd forgotten the most important thing. Lily had already decided she did. And maybe that was enough. The weeks before the hearing crawled by in a haze of preparation. Caleb met with his lawyer daily. Evelyn gave a deposition about how she'd met them, what her relationship with Lily was like, why she'd come to the ranch. The lawyer had been skeptical at first. A mountain hermit wasn't exactly the character witness Caleb needed. But Evelyn answered his questions honestly, and eventually he'd nodded. "You'll do," he'd said. "Just don't mention the part about living alone for 5 years. Makes you sound unstable." "I was unstable. That's why I was alone." "Yes? Well, let's not advertise that to the judge." The day of the hearing arrived cold and gray. Evelyn put on her best dress, still modest compared to what the society women wore, but respectable. Martha had helped with her hair, pinning it back in a way that made Evelyn look almost civilized. "You look beautiful," Caleb said when he saw her. "I look terrified." "That too." He took her hand. "Ready?" "No, but let's go anyway." The courthouse was packed. Apparently a custody battle involving one of the county's wealthiest ranchers and a mysterious mountain woman was the most entertainment the town had seen in years. Evelyn saw Victoria Sterling in the gallery, looking smug. Saw other familiar faces, some sympathetic, some openly hostile. Then she saw the Ashfords. They sat in the front row, impeccably dressed, radiating wealth and respectability. Mrs. Ashford was a severe woman with Margaret's eyes, but none of her warmth. Mr. Ashford looked like he'd never smiled in his life. Between them sat their lawyer, sorting through papers with the confidence of someone who knew he was going to win. Lily sat beside Caleb, small and scared in her Sunday dress. She kept looking back at the Ashfords like they were monsters from a nightmare. The judge entered and everyone stood. Judge Morrison was an older man with kind eyes and a reputation for fairness. Evelyn hoped that reputation was deserved. The Ashfords' lawyer went first. He painted a picture of Caleb as a grieving widower who'd made poor decisions in his loneliness, who'd brought a stranger, a woman of questionable morals and no social standing, into his home and exposed his young daughter to an inappropriate relationship, who clearly prioritized his own desires over his child's well-being. He made Evelyn sound like a predator, like she'd deliberately sought out a vulnerable man and his daughter for her own gain. By the time he finished, Evelyn wanted to sink through the floor. Then it was Caleb's lawyer's turn. He called Dutch to the stand first. The foreman testified about Caleb's devotion to Lily, how involved he was in her daily life, how much happier the girl had been since Evelyn arrived. He was calm, straightforward, impossible to dismiss. Martha went next. She talked about the way Evelyn had integrated into the household, how she helped with Lily's education, how she worked harder than any guest Martha had ever seen. One of the ranch hands testified about finding Evelyn repairing fences in the rain because she'd noticed they were weak and didn't want the cattle getting out. Then Caleb took the stand. "Mr. Hart," his lawyer said, "can you tell the court about the night you met Miss Mercer?" Caleb described the storm, the wolves, how Evelyn had saved their lives when she had every reason not to, how she'd fed them when she barely had enough food for herself, how she'd walked 6 miles through a blizzard to keep them from starving. "She could have left us outside that first night," Caleb said, his voice steady. "She could have sent us away when the storm broke. She could have stayed in her cabin when I asked her to come to the ranch. But she didn't, because despite what people want to believe about her, Evelyn Mercer is one of the most selfless people I've ever met." "And your relationship with her?" the lawyer asked. "How would you characterize it?" "I love her." Caleb said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "And I want to marry her, with the court's blessing and without it, because she makes me a better man and a better father, and Lily adores her." There was murmuring in the gallery. Evelyn felt her face burning. The Ashfords' lawyer stood up. "Mr. Hart, isn't it true that you barely knew this woman before inviting her into your home, into your daughter's life?" "I knew enough." "You knew she'd been living alone in the mountains for 5 years? That she'd completely isolated herself from society?" "I knew she'd survived things that would have broken most people. I knew she had the strength and courage to keep going when anyone else would have given up. Or perhaps she's mentally unstable. Perhaps she fled to the mountains because she couldn't function in normal society." Caleb's jaw tightened. Grief isn't mental instability, it's human. And the fact that she survived it, that she built a life for herself when everything had been taken from her, that's not weakness, that's strength. A strength you're gambling your daughter's well-being on. "No, I'm trusting my daughter's well-being to a woman who's already proven she'll protect her, who already loves her." The lawyer switched tactics. "Mr. Hart, isn't it true that you were attempting to flee the state with your daughter when you encountered Miss Mercer? That you were in fact trying to keep Lily from her grandparents?" Evelyn saw Caleb hesitate, saw him weigh truth against strategy. "Yes," he said finally, "I was running, because the Ashfords had threatened to take Lily from me, and I panicked." "So you admit you were trying to evade your in-laws' legitimate custody concerns?" "I admit I was scared. I just lost my wife. I was alone with a 6-year-old daughter and trying to figure out how to be both parents. And Margaret's parents, who hadn't visited once since the funeral, suddenly wanted to take Lily away from the only home she'd ever known." His voice rose slightly. "So yes, I ran. I made a mistake. But that mistake led me to Evelyn, and she's the best thing that's happened to me and Lily since Margaret died." The lawyer looked satisfied, like Caleb had given him exactly what he needed. He excused the witness. Then they called Evelyn to the stand. Her hands were shaking as she swore to tell the truth. She sat down and looked out at the courtroom full of people judging her and felt the old panic rising. The Ashfords' lawyer approached with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Miss Mercer, or should I say Mrs. Mercer, you were married once, correct?" "Yes." "And your husband died, along with your children. Is that correct?" Evelyn's chest tightened. "Yes." "How did they die?" "Fever. And after their deaths, you fled to the mountains, abandoned your home, your community, everyone who knew you. Why?" "Because I couldn't stay there. Everything reminded me of what I'd lost." "Or perhaps you simply couldn't cope with normal society? Couldn't handle the responsibilities of adult life?" "I could handle them fine. I chose not to." "You chose to live alone in a cabin, isolated from all human contact for 5 years. That's your idea of handling things?" Evelyn felt anger replacing the panic. "I survived. I built a life. It might not have been the life you think is appropriate, but it was mine. And then you met Mr. Hart, a wealthy, vulnerable widower, and you saw an opportunity." "No." "No? You expect this court to believe that you came to his ranch out of pure altruism? That you have no interest in his money or status?" "I don't give a damn about his money." Evelyn's voice was sharp. "I came because he asked me to, because his daughter needed someone who understood loss, because I thought maybe I could help." "How convenient. And now you're positioning yourself to become the lady of a prosperous ranch. Quite an upgrade from a mountain shack. I never asked for any of this." "But you're accepting it, living in his house, involving yourself in his daughter's life, playing at being a mother when you couldn't even save your own children. The words hit like a physical blow. Evelyn heard gasps from the gallery, saw Caleb half rise from his seat before his lawyer pulled him back down. "That's not fair," she said quietly. "Isn't it? You failed as a mother once before. Why should we trust you with Lily?" "I didn't fail. They got sick. There was nothing I could do." "And yet you're asking us to believe you're qualified to raise another child, when your own children died under your care." Evelyn felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "I'm not asking you to believe anything. I'm telling you the truth. I care about Lily. I care about Caleb. And if keeping them together means I have to sit here and let you tear apart the worst thing that ever happened to me, then fine, do it. But don't you dare suggest that I'm using them or that I don't love that little girl." The lawyer looked triumphant. "So you admit you love her? That you formed an inappropriate attachment to a child who isn't yours? There's nothing inappropriate about caring for a kid who's been through hell. The Ashfords can provide Lily with stability, proper education, social connections. What can you offer her? Lessons in surviving the wilderness? I can offer her someone who understands what she's lost. Someone who won't pretend that grief doesn't exist or that she should just get over it because it's been 2 years." Evelyn leaned forward. "I can offer her the truth, that life is hard and unfair and sometimes the people you love die. But you keep going anyway. You find reasons to get up in the morning. And sometimes, if you're really lucky, you find new people to love. That's what I can teach her." The lawyer stared at her for a moment, then turned to the judge. "No further questions." Evelyn was excused. She walked back to her seat on shaking legs and sat down beside Caleb. He grabbed her hand and held it tight. "You did good," he whispered. Evelyn didn't feel like she'd done good. She felt like she'd been eviscerated. The judge called a recess to review the testimonies. 2 hours of waiting while he decided Lily's fate. Evelyn and Caleb sat in a side room with their lawyer, who seemed cautiously optimistic. "The Ashfords have money and status," he said. "But Morrison's not the type to be impressed by that. He cares about what's best for the child." "And what is best?" Evelyn asked quietly. The lawyer looked uncomfortable. "Honestly, I don't know. Both sides made compelling arguments. Lily had been sent to wait with Martha, but now she appeared in the doorway. "Sweetheart, you should be," Caleb started. "I want to talk to the judge," Lily said. Everyone stared at her. "Lily, I don't think," the lawyer began. "I want to talk to him. It's my life. Don't I get a say?" The lawyer looked at Caleb, who looked at Evelyn. She saw the question in his eyes. "Let her," Evelyn said. "If she wants to speak, let her." The lawyer went to ask the judge, who agreed to hear from Lily in his chambers. She walked in there alone, small and brave, and Evelyn felt her heart crack open. 20 minutes later, Lily emerged. Her eyes were red, but her chin was up. "What did you say?" Caleb asked gently. "I told him the truth, that you're a good papa, that Evelyn's been teaching me things, that I don't want to live with grandparents I don't even know." She paused. "And I told him that if he makes me leave, I'll just run away and come back." Despite everything, Evelyn almost smiled. "That's my girl." They were called back into the courtroom. The judge took his seat, his expression unreadable. "I've considered all the testimony," he said. "This is a difficult case. On one hand, the Ashfords can provide material advantages and social connections that would benefit the child. On the other hand, Mr. Hart is Lily's father and has raised her lovingly since birth." Evelyn held her breath. "However," the judge continued, "I'm troubled by some of the Ashfords' arguments, particularly the attacks on Miss Mercer's character. This court is not in the business of dictating who people may or may not associate with, so long as the child's safety isn't compromised. And nothing I've heard today suggests that Lily is in any danger." Mrs. Ashford made a noise of protest. "Furthermore," the judge said, "I had a conversation with Lily herself, and she made it very clear where she wants to be. While a child's preference isn't the only factor, it is an important one, especially when that child is as articulate and certain as Lily Hart." He looked directly at the Ashfords. "Your petition for custody is denied. Lily will remain with her father." The courtroom erupted. Caleb pulled Lily into his arms, holding her like he'd never let go. Evelyn sat frozen, unable to process what had just happened. They'd won. The Ashfords stormed out, their lawyer trailing behind them, making threats about appeals. But Caleb's lawyer was smiling, shaking their hands, saying something about how appeals rarely succeeded. Evelyn barely heard any of it. She was watching Lily's face, seeing the relief and joy there, and feeling something she hadn't felt in years. Like maybe she'd done something right. Outside the courthouse, a small crowd had gathered. Some were hostile. Victoria Sterling and her friends glaring from across the street, but others were smiling. Dutch gave Evelyn a respectful nod. Martha was crying happy tears. Even some of the townspeople who'd been neutral before now looked at her with something like respect. "You did it," Evelyn said to Caleb. "We did it." He pulled her close, right there in front of everyone. Together, Lily wrapped her arms around both of them, and for the first time since everything started, Evelyn let herself believe it might actually work. This strange, broken family they'd built from grief and survival and stubborn hope, it might actually work. The victory should have solved everything. But life, Evelyn had learned, didn't work that way. The Ashfords filed their appeal exactly 1 week after the hearing. Their lawyer hand-delivered the notice while Evelyn was teaching Lily how to churn butter on the back porch. The girl's face had gone pale when she saw the official seal. "They're not giving up, are they?" Lily asked quietly. Evelyn wanted to lie, wanted to tell her everything would be fine, but Lily deserved the truth. "No, sweetheart, they're not." Caleb read the notice and crumpled it in his fist. "This is harassment. The judge already ruled." "Rich people don't like losing," Evelyn said, "and they've got enough money to keep fighting until they get what they want. Then we keep fighting too." But Evelyn could see the toll it was taking. Caleb was working himself ragged, trying to manage the ranch and deal with lawyers and keep Lily from seeing how worried he was. Lily had started having nightmares again, waking up crying that men in suits were taking her away, and the town gossip had only gotten worse. "Heard the Ashfords are offering to drop the appeal if Hart sends that woman packing," Dutch mentioned one morning while they were checking fence lines. Evelyn's hand stilled on the wire she was mending. "Where'd you hear that? Town talk? Might be garbage, might not." He glanced at her. "What would you do, if it was true?" "I'd leave. Tonight if it meant Lily could stay." "Even though you love them?" Evelyn looked at him sharply. "I never said—" "You didn't have to. It's written all over your face every time you look at either of them." Dutch hammered a staple into the post. "But running won't fix this. Those people want Lily for the wrong reasons. Control. Legacy. Whatever rich folks care about that normal people don't. You leaving just shows them they can bully you into doing what they want. And if staying means Caleb loses his daughter, then we lost anyway. But at least we lost fighting instead of rolling over." Evelyn thought about that conversation all day. That night, after Lily had finally fallen asleep, she found Caleb in his study, surrounded by legal documents. "We need to talk," she said. He looked up, and she saw the exhaustion in his eyes. "If this is about the offer the Ashfords made, so it's true. Their lawyer approached mine, said they'd drop everything if you left, and I agreed not to marry you or anyone else for 5 years. He stood up, came around the desk. I told him to go to hell. "Caleb, no, I'm not negotiating with them. I'm not letting them dictate my life or who I love. Even if it means losing Lily? It won't come to that." "You don't know that." Evelyn's voice rose. "What if the appeal works? What if some other judge decides differently? What if—" "Then we'll deal with it. Together." "Stop saying that." The words burst out of her. "Stop acting like I'm some permanent fixture in your life. I'm not. I'm a complication you don't need." Caleb stared at her. "Is that really what you think? That you're a complication?" "Look at the evidence, Caleb. Your in-laws are using me as ammunition. The town hates me. I'm making everything worse. You're also making everything better. Lily's happier. I'm happier. The ranch runs smoother. The hands respect you. Martha loves you. Hell, even Dutch is on your side now." "That doesn't change the facts." "What facts? That some bitter old people and a bunch of gossips don't like you? Who cares?" He moved closer. "I love you, Evelyn. And I'm going to marry you whether it's convenient or not." Evelyn felt her breath catch. "You haven't actually asked me, haven't I?" He pulled something from his pocket, a simple gold band that looked old and well-loved. "This was my grandmother's. I was going to wait until all this legal mess was over, do it properly. But I'm tired of waiting. I'm tired of pretending there's any universe where I don't want to spend the rest of my life with you." He dropped to one knee right there in the study, and Evelyn felt tears burning her eyes. Evelyn Mercer. Will you marry me? Will you be my wife and Lily's mother and put up with my stubbornness for however many years we have left? She wanted to say yes. The word was right there, pushing against her teeth, but fear held it back. What if I fail you? She whispered. What if I'm not strong enough for this? You walked through a blizzard to save strangers. You survived 5 years alone in the mountains. You stood up in court and let a lawyer tear you apart to protect my daughter. He stood up, still holding the ring. You're the strongest person I know, but even strong people get scared. Even strong people need help sometimes. I don't know how to be a wife anymore, or a mother. Neither did I know how to be a single father. We figured it out. He took her hand. We'll figure this out too. Evelyn looked at this man who'd stumbled into her life during a storm and refused to leave, who'd seen her at her worst and somehow decided she was worth loving anyway, who was offering her a future she'd stopped believing she deserved. Yes, she said quietly. Yes? Yes, I'll marry you, you stubborn, impossible man. Caleb's smile could have lit up the whole ranch. He slipped the ring on her finger, a little loose, but they could fix that, and kissed her like they had all the time in the world instead of an appeal hanging over their heads. When they pulled apart, Lily was standing in the doorway in her nightgown. Does this mean Evelyn's going to be my mama for real? She asked. Caleb laughed. Yes, sweetheart, for real. Lily ran across the room and threw herself at Evelyn, who caught her and held on tight. The three of them stood there in the lamplight, holding each other, and Evelyn thought that maybe this was what happiness felt like. Messy and complicated and terrifying, but real. The next morning, they told Martha, who cried and hugged Evelyn so hard she could barely breathe. They told Dutch, who actually smiled, a rare occurrence, and shook Caleb's hand. Word spread through the ranch within hours, and by evening, the hands had organized an impromptu celebration. Someone brought out a fiddle. Someone else produced whiskey that was probably illegal. They cleared space in the barn and lit it with lanterns, and people started dancing. Evelyn stood on the edge watching, overwhelmed by the noise and the people and the sheer foreignness of being celebrated instead of judged. You should dance, Martha said, appearing beside her. I don't remember how. Sure you do. It's like riding a horse. Comes back to you. Before Evelyn could protest, Caleb was there, holding out his hand. Dance with me, he said. I'll step on your feet. I don't care. He pulled her into the makeshift dance floor, and she tried to remember the steps her husband had taught her 20 years ago. She was clumsy at first, stumbling over her own feet, but Caleb just laughed and held her steady. See? You remember. Barely. They spun past Dutch, who was teaching Lily some complicated footwork she had no business knowing at 6 years old. Past Martha, who was dancing with one of the older ranch hands. Past faces that had been suspicious weeks ago but were smiling now. They're coming around, Caleb said, following her gaze. The town, too. Slowly, but they are. Some of them will never accept me. Then they can stay miserable while we're happy. Their choice. Evelyn rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat beneath the music. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You just didn't notice because you were too busy being stubborn. She smiled despite herself. Fair point. They danced until her feet hurt and the musicians got tired and people started drifting back to the bunkhouses. Lily had fallen asleep on a pile of hay, and Caleb carried her to the house while Evelyn followed, her hand warm in his. This was her life now. This ranch, these people, this strange family she'd never planned on having. The thought still scared her, but the fear was getting quieter, easier to ignore. The appeal hearing was scheduled for 2 months later. 2 months of waiting and worrying and trying to live normally while knowing everything could change. Evelyn threw herself into ranch work. She helped with the spring branding, learned to break horses, got involved in planning the seasonal drives. The hands stopped seeing her as the boss's strange fiancée and started seeing her as one of them. Someone who worked hard and didn't complain and could hold her own. She also started teaching Lily more seriously. Not just survival skills, but reading and arithmetic and history. The girl was smart, quicker than most adults Evelyn had known, and she soaked up knowledge like desert sand soaked up rain. Why do I need to know about the Revolutionary War? Lily asked one afternoon. Because history tells you where you came from. And if you don't know where you came from, you don't know where you're going. Where are we going? Evelyn looked up from the book they were reading. Where do you want to go? Nowhere. I want to stay here forever. Lily paused. Is that okay? Not wanting to leave? It's more than okay. It's home. What if the judge makes me leave anyway? Evelyn set the book aside. Then we'll fight it, and if we lose, your papa and I will find a way to get you back. I promise you that. You keep your promises. Always. Lily seemed satisfied with that. They went back to reading about George Washington crossing the Delaware, and Evelyn thought about promises and how they were both the easiest and hardest things to make. Victoria Sterling showed up at the ranch one afternoon without warning. Evelyn was in the kitchen helping Martha prepare dinner when the woman swept in like she owned the place. I need to speak with you, Victoria announced. Privately. Martha looked like she wanted to throw Victoria out, but Evelyn shook her head. It's fine. We can talk on the porch. Outside, Victoria got straight to the point. I came to apologize. Evelyn nearly fell over. You what? I was wrong about you. I said terrible things, spread vicious gossip, and tried to turn the town against you. Victoria's face was tight. It was cruel and petty, and I'm sorry. What changed your mind? My daughter. Victoria looked away. She ran off last week, eloped with a man I didn't approve of, and I realized I'd spent so much time worrying about appearances and respectability that I'd pushed away the person who mattered most. She met Evelyn's eyes. You fight for Lily. You don't care what people think. You just love her and protect her. I wish I'd been that brave with my own child. Evelyn didn't know what to say. This was the last thing she'd expected. I'm not telling you this for forgiveness, Victoria continued. I know I don't deserve it, but I wanted you to know that some of us in town are starting to see what Caleb saw from the beginning, that you're not what we thought you were. What did you think I was? A threat. Someone different. Someone who didn't follow our rules. Victoria smiled slightly. Turns out that's exactly what this town needed. Someone to shake things up. She left after that, and Evelyn stood on the porch for a long time, trying to process what had just happened. The world was strange sometimes, full of surprises that didn't fit into neat categories of good or bad. The appeal hearing came faster than Evelyn wanted and slower than she could stand. They wore their best clothes again, said goodbye to Lily, who was staying with Martha this time, and drove to the courthouse with their lawyer. The Ashfords looked older, tireder, like this fight was costing them more than they'd expected. But they were still there, still pushing, still trying to take Lily away. The arguments were similar to before. The Ashfords' lawyer talked about stability and proper upbringing and the advantages they could provide. Caleb's lawyer talked about love and family, and the fact that nothing in the previous ruling had changed. But then the Ashfords' lawyer produced something new. A witness, a supposed expert in child development, who testified that children needed stability, that moving Lily to Boston would actually be beneficial in the long run, that Caleb's upcoming marriage to Evelyn represented another massive change that could be traumatic. Caleb's lawyer tried to counter, but the expert was smooth and convincing. Evelyn felt her stomach sinking. During the lunch recess, she found Caleb pacing outside. We're going to lose, he said. You don't know that. That expert made us sound like we're destroying Lily's life. What if he's right? What if getting married is too much change too fast? Evelyn grabbed his shoulders. Stop. You're spiraling. I'm being realistic. You're giving up, and that's not the man I agreed to marry. He looked at her, and she saw the fear there. The same fear she'd been carrying since the day she'd opened her cabin door. What if I lose her? He whispered. Then we'll get her back, somehow, but we haven't lost yet. When they returned to the courtroom, the judge looked grim. He reviewed the new testimony, asked a few questions, then sat back. I'm going to be honest, he said. This is more complicated than the original case. The expert testimony raises valid concerns about stability and change. Evelyn felt Caleb's hand find hers under the table. However, the judge continued, I'm troubled by the timing. The Ashfords have had 2 years to express concern about Lily's welfare, 2 years to visit or check on her or be involved in her life. They only filed for custody when Mr. Hart began a relationship with Miss Mercer. That suggests this isn't about Lily's best interests. It's about control. Mrs. Ashford started to stand, but her lawyer pulled her back down. Furthermore, the judge said, I've reviewed the original case file. I've read what Lily told Judge Morrison. And that child made it very clear where she wants to be. Unless the Ashfords can provide evidence of actual harm or neglect, which they have not, I see no reason to overturn the previous ruling. He looked directly at the Ashfords. Your appeal is denied. This matter is closed. If you continue to harass this family with legal action, I will consider sanctions. The gavel came down with a finality that echoed through the courtroom. It was over. Really, truly over. Caleb pulled Evelyn into his arms right there in front of everyone, and she didn't care who saw or what they thought. They'd won. They'd actually won. Outside, the Ashfords' carriage was already pulling away. Evelyn watched it disappear and felt something loosen in her chest. Those people had no power over them anymore. No claim, no threat. They were free. The wedding happened 3 weeks later in the ranch's south pasture, with wildflowers scattered everywhere and the mountains watching from a distance. Evelyn wore a simple white dress that Martha had helped her pick out. Lily wore yellow and carried flowers, beaming like the sun itself. Evelyn had expected a small ceremony, just family and close friends. But the whole town showed up. Dutch stood as Caleb's best man, looking uncomfortable in formal clothes. Martha cried through the entire ceremony. The ranch hands formed an honor guard, and even some of the townspeople who'd been hostile before came to watch. Victoria Sterling was there, sitting in the back with her daughter, who'd apparently reconciled with her mother and brought her new husband. She nodded at Evelyn, a gesture of respect, if not quite friendship. The ceremony itself was simple. No elaborate vows or lengthy speeches, just two people promising to love each other and the child they were building a family around. When the minister asked if anyone objected, Evelyn half expected someone to speak up, but there was only silence and birdsong and the wind moving through the grass. I now pronounce you husband and wife, the minister said. Caleb kissed her and Lily cheered, and somewhere in the crowd, someone started playing a fiddle. Music swelled across the pasture, and people started dancing right there in the grass. Evelyn found herself swept into it, passed from partner to partner, Dutch, who was surprisingly graceful, Martha, who couldn't stop crying, even some of the town ladies who'd scorned her weeks ago. They were celebrating not just a wedding, but something bigger, a victory over prejudice and fear, a new beginning. Later, after the sun had set and the guests had finally left, Evelyn stood on the porch with Caleb and Lily, watching the last lanterns flicker out across the pasture. Are you happy? Caleb asked. Evelyn thought about it. Really thought. 5 years ago, she'd been ready to die, ready to disappear into the mountains and let the cold take her. She'd been so sure that happiness was something other people got to have. Not her. Not after losing everything that mattered. But standing here with her new husband's arm around her waist and her new daughter pressed against her side, she realized something. Happiness wasn't about never losing anything. It was about having the courage to build something new after loss tried to destroy you. Yes, she said. I'm happy. Lily yawned and leaned heavier against Evelyn. Can we do this forever? Do what, sweetheart? Just be together, the three of us. That's the plan, Caleb said. Good. Lily's eyes were already closing. I like this plan. Evelyn carried the girl inside and tucked her into bed, brushing hair back from her forehead the way she used to do with her own daughter. The memory didn't hurt the way it once had. It was still there, still real, but it had softened around the edges, become something she could hold without bleeding. I love you, Mama, Lily whispered, half asleep. Evelyn's throat went tight. I love you too, baby. Back on the porch, Caleb was waiting. They sat together in the darkness, listening to the ranch settle down for the night. The horses in the barn, the cattle in the distant pastures, the wind in the trees. Thank you, Caleb said. For what? For opening the door that night, for saving us, for staying when you had every reason to run. Evelyn leaned against him. Thank you for asking me to stay. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Caleb said, What would you have done if I hadn't shown up that night? If you'd spent the rest of your life in that cabin? Survived, probably, until I didn't. Evelyn looked up at the stars. I wasn't living, Caleb. I was just existing, waiting for time to pass until I could be with my family again. And now? Now I'm living. For the first time in 5 years, I actually want to wake up in the morning, want to see what tomorrow brings. She turned to look at him. You did that. You and Lily, you reminded me that surviving isn't the same as living. You reminded us of the same thing. Evelyn thought about that, about how grief had tried to destroy all three of them in different ways, about how they'd found each other in the middle of a storm and somehow built something worth fighting for. "Do you think we would have found each other?" she asked, "if the storm hadn't happened?" "I don't know. Maybe." Caleb pulled her closer. "But I'm glad we didn't have to find out. I'm glad you opened that door, even though I almost didn't. Especially because you almost didn't. It means the choice mattered, means you chose us even when it scared you." Evelyn had spent 5 years believing that choosing to care about people was the same as choosing to get hurt, that love was just a guarantee of future pain. But sitting here with Caleb, thinking about Lily sleeping safely inside, she realized something. Love was a risk, always would be. There were no guarantees that Caleb wouldn't get sick, or that something wouldn't happen to Lily, or that grief wouldn't find them again. Life was unpredictable and cruel and full of ways to break your heart. But refusing to love people didn't protect you from pain. It just guaranteed you'd be alone when the pain came. And being alone, Evelyn had learned, was its own kind of death. "I'm glad I opened the door too," she said quietly. They stayed out there until the cold drove them inside, until the ranch was dark and quiet. And when Evelyn climbed into bed beside her husband, still strange to think, she didn't lie awake worrying about all the things that could go wrong. Instead, she thought about the little girl down the hall who called her mama, about the man beside her who'd chosen her despite all the reasons not to, about the ranch that had become home and the people who'd become family. She thought about how courage didn't always look like strength. Sometimes it looked like a woman opening a door in a storm. Sometimes it looked like a man asking that woman to stay. Sometimes it looked like a little girl choosing to trust again after loss. Sometimes the bravest thing you could do was let yourself be vulnerable. Let yourself care. Let yourself hope that maybe, just maybe, good things could last. Evelyn fell asleep that night with Caleb's arm around her waist and no nightmares waiting in the darkness. She fell asleep believing in tomorrow. And in the morning, when she woke to Lily jumping on the bed and Caleb laughing and sunlight streaming through the windows, she realized something else. She'd stopped surviving and started living. And that made all the difference. The mountains still stood in the distance, silent and waiting. The cabin was still there, empty now, slowly being reclaimed by the wilderness. But Evelyn didn't need it anymore. Didn't need isolation or silence or the illusion of safety that came from keeping the world at arm's length. She had everything she needed right here. A family built from broken pieces. A love that had survived judgment and gossip and legal battles. A future that was uncertain but worth fighting for. She had learned what the mountains had been trying to teach her all along, that the strongest people aren't the ones who never fall apart. They're the ones who fall apart and find the courage to put themselves back together. Who open doors when it would be easier to hide. Who choose connection over safety and love over fear. Life had tried to destroy Evelyn Mercer, had taken everything she loved and left her with nothing but grief and anger and the desire to disappear. But she'd survived, and more than that, she'd found her way back to something that looked like happiness. Not the easy, uncomplicated happiness of people who'd never lost anything. The hard-won happiness of someone who knew exactly how much it cost and chose it anyway. That night, as they sat down to dinner, Caleb and Evelyn and Lily, plus Martha who'd been invited to stay, plus Dutch who'd shown up uninvited but was welcomed anyway, Evelyn looked around the table at these people who'd become her family. And she understood something her mother used to say, back before fever and death and 5 years of isolation. Something Evelyn had forgotten in her grief. Home wasn't a place. It was people. And family wasn't always the one you were born into. Sometimes it was the one you chose.